So this is my VIP room.
Fred Chen spent a year and a half in this cell for a crime he didn't commit. In 1971, aged just 21, he was a Malaysian student in Taiwan when he became accused of bombing a US government office. He would go on to spend 12 years in prison, detained and tortured first here at the Jingmei Detention Center in New Taipei, then in Taiwan's notorious jail for political prisoners on Green Island. To this day, he still doesn't know why he was singled out.
Sometimes I will stand here and look out through the window. I try to find some explanation why I was in this room.
Chen was just one of many people targeted by the nationalist Kuomintang government led by Chiang Kai-shek, which had taken over Taiwan at the end of World War II in 1945. Martial law was declared in 1949, and it would not be lifted for nearly 40 years. It remains a dark period of repression in Taiwan's history, often referred to as the White Terror, where as many as 200,000 people were imprisoned. Martial law was finally lifted on July 15, 1987.
It was a very brutal, authoritarian form of martial law. Many thousands of dissidents were arrested, and many were killed. And so the symbolic end of that moment, even though there were many events that led up to it, represented a really important step in Taiwan's democratization. Probably the single most important symbolic moment.
But while that date was important, Chen says it wasn't until 5 years later, in 1992, when further legal reforms were made, that political prisoners like himself were truly free to speak out without fear of repercussions, and that the White Terror was officially over. Although the memories still haunt him, Chen continues to lead tours through the former detention center where he was once held, now a memorial park. Etched into the walls here, over 12,000 names of confirmed victims of political persecution, including his own. For Chen, revisiting these painful times is essential to safeguarding Taiwan's hard-won democracy.
If you don't see the importance of remembering the past, if you just enjoy the democracy and freedom, if you don't pay attention to preserve it, then the tragedies in the past could possibly happen and reoccur in any time in the future.
2025 marks 38 years since the end of 38 years of martial law. Taiwan has been free of military rule for as long as it's spent under it. And in the years since, Taiwan has checked off the milestones of its democratic development: the legalization of other political parties like the now ruling Democratic Progressive Party, the first direct presidential election, the first peaceful transfer of political power, all driven by social activism in opposition to single-party authoritarian rule. In today's Taiwan, officials are freely elected and may be freely removed if voters are unhappy with them, as can be seen in the current mass recall movement, which is targeting the seats of dozens of lawmakers.
Obviously, with the end of martial law and the constitutional reform in the early 1990s and all of the political the changes and institutional changes that were enabled by the end of martial law, that's created the political conditions where recalls can happen. I think you can understand the current movement in the long history of social movement activism. So it is part of that long history, and clearly the DPP has tried to locate it within that history.
Today's Kuomintang, now a democratic party and currently in the opposition, sees things differently. It says it's now being persecuted, as all 26 legislators up for recall so far this summer are from the KMT. It's a reminder that the traumatic legacy of martial law still echoes across Taiwan's political landscape. What is certain is that without the country's hard-won freedoms and the resilience of survivors like Fred Chen, the right of Taiwanese people to choose and recall their leaders and representatives wouldn't be part of today's democratic reality. Howard Chang, Alex Chen, and Issy for TaiwanPlus.